next interview. And for this, I'd like to bring on a very special guest. And that is Edwin, who is the CTO of the Digital Currency Initiative at PayPal. You may have seen them do a lot of new things in our ecosystem. And to talk about all those things, we're going to have this live conversation. So please give Edwin a big round of applause. All right. I am very excited for this conversation. And we'll kind of start with some stage setting. And my first question to you is, well, tell us about who you are and your role at PayPal.
And here I was expecting hard questions. So my name is Edwin Aoki. I'm the CTO of PayPal's Blockchain, Crypto, and Digital Currencies unit, which encompasses both our digital asset space as well as global remittances at PayPal, which we can talk about a little bit later, I guess, in terms of how that plays together. I've been at company for 14 years and a bit. About 4 years in this role. Was one of the founders of this unit, and prior to that was PayPal's chief architect for about a decade. Spent a lot of time in internet and finance, so Netscape, AOL, Intuit, all names in sort of consumer internet and consumer finance spaces.
Amazing. And I think it's one of those important and amazing things here that I don't think anybody needs an introduction to what PayPal is. It's been such a prominent part of just the internet as history that we all have this context on what PayPal is and how we kind of got into just e-commerce and eBay and everything from early 2000s and late 90s. The thing I'm kind of curious about is what got you and PayPal excited about crypto, and what's the opportunity here?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was PayPal's chief architect for a while, and that's a role that lets me play in a whole bunch of different sandboxes across all of the PayPal companies. And one of those activities was running essentially our research and development and innovation function within PayPal. As part of that, we started looking at blockchain technology, both as a core technology as well as a building block for crypto fairly early on, probably 6-7 years ago. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we started to really believe that the technology was starting to be right, that the opportunity in the market was starting to be right, and that what we were seeing in the digital asset space was really going to be transformative for payments. And so we came into this space not because we're crypto maximalists per se, but because we're payments maximalists, and we think that digital assets and crypto by extension is really a better way and a more modern and efficient way to do payments. Cecilia just before was talking about SWIFT, which in fact is 50 years old. But even if you go before that, wire transfers, which still run a lot of the underlying rails for commerce and payments, like the first wire transfer was like 152 years ago. So that's what we're dealing with, and crypto and digital assets really gives us the opportunity to really move the game into something that's more modern, something that's more efficient, and ultimately something that's going to make payments better.
Maybe kind of to understand a small nuance here, as somebody who is part of PayPal, where you've been in so many countries and you've kind of figured out anywhere from the rails to regulatory side of basically every currency I can think of, what is the efficiency gain that you are unlocking here? Is it purely the fact that settlement becomes faster, or more? Because if anything, you are in the perfect position to make this already seamless without introducing any decentralized ledger in the game.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of people in a lot of places do use PayPal and are able to take advantage of that. But the reality is that when you think about a product like PayPal or Venmo or Grab or any of the others, they sort of exist in this layer above the financial system, right? Like they are, in some sense, maybe the original layer 2 on top of the financial system's layer 1, right? And so, yeah, when you transfer money across PayPal, your balance ticks up and things look like it's happened instantaneously. The reality is that money is moving 3, 5, 7, 10 days later, especially if we're talking about cross-border. And when we think about how you are able to execute payments, not just within the PayPal ecosystem, but more broadly, those inefficiencies really add up. So I know that there's a number of you in here that are founders or entrepreneurs, maybe you're investors. And if you think about your last funding round as an example, how many times has somebody sort of said, oh, I can't close my round because that last check hasn't quite come in? Or, I issued the wire transfer request, but the bank's closed.
3 p.m. on Friday.
Yeah, exactly, 3 p.m. on Friday, so sorry, you have to wait until next week, right? The modernization of the rails fundamentally changes the game for those things. And so yes, it's faster, but it's also 24/7, just like the internet is. It's much lower cost. You can move hundreds of millions of dollars across the network for pennies, depending upon what protocol that you're using. And that starts to create efficiencies and entirely new use cases that, when combined with smart contracts and programming, really start to unlock a whole new set of use cases. Beyond that, when you think about the convergence between, what we're doing in the digital asset space and the increased automation and agentification of the internet, you can't give a bot a credit card, right?
Not yet.
You probably won't ever be able to give a bot a credit card, but if you want an agent to be able to perform commerce on your behalf, you're going to need some way to be able to exchange value. And that is undoubtedly going to be in the digital asset space. So again, if we're going to be participating in payments, if we're going to continue to be a leader in this space, we need to be a leader in digital assets.
That makes a lot of sense. And kind of speaking of, you've recently launched a stablecoin. And tell us about what led to that, and how do you kind of think about the PayPal stablecoin here?
Yeah, not so recently by sort of crypto standards. It's about August of 23, so about 15 months old now. But yeah, as I said, we started our adventure in sort of retail and consumer crypto by offering our PayPal customers the ability to buy and sell crypto on the platform, Bitcoin, Ethereum, a couple of others. And we actually had two reasons for doing that. One was that we wanted to first familiarize our users with this sort of asset class and being able to understand and have them be able to take advantage of that in a manner that they found safe and comfortable and familiar through the experiences and interfaces that they already had. But then beyond that, we knew that we had work to do to understand how customers were using that, to understand how our regulators and our compliance and risk sort of profiles would change as a result of that. Excuse me, and we learned a lot through that process. One of the things that we launched shortly after what we call our buy, sell, hold product was the ability to be able to use any crypto that you're holding in the PayPal wallet as a payment instrument at any PayPal merchant. So if you're in the United States, you have $300 of ETH in your PayPal wallet, and you wanted to buy a new pair of shoes at Nike.com. Nike.com is a PayPal merchant. You could spend that ETH and buy those shoes. Nike didn't have to do anything to integrate with that. They get paid out in fiat, just like they would with any PayPal transaction. So that was a way, again, that we sort of were able to learn more about how consumers were using it and what they wanted to do, and also to familiarize both sides of the network, the merchant side and the consumer side, with the fact that these assets were there and real and had the same level of protections and the same level of utility that the PayPal balance transactions did. And then, but again, from the beginning, our intent was to launch a stablecoin, something that wasn't quite as price volatile, something that was able to be really focused on the payments use cases. And then it took us a couple years to do that, not mostly because of the tech, I will have to admit. But we were able to go out with that and followed that up about 6 months later with the launch in our second chain, Solana. And with that, I think that we've really started to be able to drive stablecoins as a payment token as opposed to as a store of value, which was really the whole intent.
And if anything, this is the perfect way to understand kind of the effects of distribution here. And if merchants are okay with this world, you get to learn so much and so much faster. In that Nike example, did the merchant know that this was?
They don't. Again, because in most cases, we settle directly with the merchant in the mechanisms that they prefer to. They didn't have to change their integration. They didn't have to know. They don't even necessarily have to be in a country where they have to worry about sort of the licensing and all of that of crypto. I was in Australia shortly after we launched this feature, and I remember, one of my favorite stories is that a very large merchant in Australia came up to me and said, "Hey, what you're doing is great. Like, how do I accept crypto on my site?" And I pulled up my phone and I said, "You already do," which is like the easiest sales pitch ever. So we'll continue to expand that to more locations where consumers can do that with the wallet. We'll expand that so there are other settlement mechanisms that come with that. But as I said, the ubiquity of that. Our lawyers probably won't let me say this, but you guys are all friends, right? Like, I think that PYUSD has the greatest acceptance at point of sale of any crypto, simply because of the fact that we can seamlessly integrate with the PayPal merchant base through that.
Maybe to a small pushback and a follow-up, why not integrate existing hyper-available stablecoins directly, and what kind of is different here with PYUSD and any other stablecoin?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think when we started this whole thing, our intent was to create a token that would be really optimized for payments.
So are there any specific contract features here that are?
Yeah, so where we started with this, we started with ERC20 because of the ubiquity and the network effects and the developer community that allowed for PYUSD to start showing up in MetaMask and blockchain explorers and DeFi apps and the like, literally within hours after we launched. And that was important because we wanted to make sure that we were participating as part of this community, and that folks that had already made investments in the Ethereum space could do so with PYUSD and the token that we brought. But we always knew that we were going to be multi-chain. We always knew that we were going to bring additional features. And we continue to work with not only the Ethereum community, but also when we launched on Solana, an example, we were one of the very first stablecoins to register the token extension, for example, for confidential transfers. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the confidential transfers extension, this allows for amounts of Solana tokens that are exchanged on chain to be masked and encrypted, so that the existence of the transaction is visible, but the amount isn't. And why is that important? If you are paying payroll on chain, the last thing that you want to do is to be able to essentially broadcast your entire company's salary to anybody with a blockchain explorer. If you're doing business-to-business transactions, the last thing that you want to do is to have somebody be able to start analyzing your sales data ahead of an earnings report or ahead of those kinds of things. And so, we've been working with the community to really understand what are the unique extensions and the unique attributes in the contracts that really can facilitate payments, and incorporating that into the token. So on the Ethereum side, no, not a whole lot. Our primary differentiation there is the holding mechanism of our reserves, which is in a limited purpose New York trust. So this gets into sort of deep finance arcadia, but limited purpose trust basically means that token holders' assets of reserve are held in the name of the token holders, and they're bankruptcy remote. So if PayPal or Paxos, who's our issuer, goes under, token holders still get paid out for all of those reserves.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a very specific, amazing detail.
It's a very specific, like I said, it's a kind of arcane detail, but when we think about it from a financial services lens, and how do we create the maximum level of protections for customers, like those are the kinds of things that we went in. So not all of that is sort of specifically in the token design. Some of it's in the design of the reserves or the design of sort of the way that we engage with the ecosystem. But those are the kinds of things that we started thinking about when we wanted to go out, and those were not attributes that we necessarily saw elsewhere in this space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I was curious about was how was the experience doing this at a company that's public, big, and is trying to disrupt itself. I can imagine there's a lot of pushback. I can imagine there is more lawyers than engineers talking about what to do here. I'm just speculating, and it may not have been that easy. So how did you kind of get over the the hurdle of actually saying, hey, let's actually push through this thing because it actually is beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, actually, we've had a lot of really great support from our senior leadership, from our CEO at the time all the way on down. Our current CEO is a huge supporter of what we're doing because, again, the core of what we're doing this for is because we're a payments company. And we believe this is a better way to do payments and the future of the way that payments will be done. So this is really seen as the way that we continue to drive leadership into the next generation of payments. We do have a number of lawyers. We do have a fairly robust risk mitigation and risk controls organization. But we actually see that as a feature and not a bug. Because when, as an example, our token is greenlisted by the New York Department of Financial Services. And that means that if you are an exchange or you are somebody that is a regulated institution, you don't need to go and ask permission to list our token from your regulator. It's sort of granted by the fact that they've done the diligence and that they trust that we've done the diligence across that. So we are considered a safe asset for that activity. And that comes because, A, we have 25 years of sort of history and trust in the marketplace, but also because we apply the same level of rigor that we do for our fiat transactions, for our core business into crypto. Now, I will say that as the guy that leads engineering for that hasn't necessarily always been easy. Our unit probably has been audited internally more times than any other unit at PayPal. And yet, I think that we move faster than probably any other unit at PayPal because we get to, first of all, take advantage of all of the great work that's happening in spaces like this and across the rest of the ecosystem, but also because that's what the space demands. And so, I think it's been a fun journey. It's been great to be able to create that level of education and level of awareness, both internally to PayPal and externally amongst, sort of the Web 2, the great unwashed masses of folks that haven't yet seen the light. But to be able to really bring that into a new realm, and everybody talks about the next billion users. We're concentrating on the 400 million users that we already have and being able to really give them a safe and efficient way to get into this asset.
Awesome. Kind of the two small things I'm kind of curious about are understanding kind of how do you think about this thing when you are making a decision to integrate this thing at a global scale. PYUSD is, from its name, specific to a single country's currency. How does that sort of go beyond just either one currency or that infrastructure powering other things? And kind of what's a good framework that you found to scale this across the entire PayPal user base?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when we think about the overall space, and one of the things that is unique about PYUSD relative to PayPal and PayPal Balance is the fact that PYUSD is portable, right? A few weeks after we launched, through partners and folks that, wallets and both custody and the non-custodial wallets that picked it up, PYUSD was available to customers in, I think, 150 countries. And from a first-party perspective, from PayPal at the time, it was available in one. So, we are big believers in the power of the ecosystem to really be able to take PYUSD to the extent that it's useful and expand that into markets where they have expertise and they have product market fit for what they're doing. For our part, the reality is that if you look at what stablecoins are used for most today, and some of the things that we're looking at, especially in terms of large volume business-to-business kinds of transactions, most of all that is still denominated in dollars. So, the depth of crypto liquidity pools on dollars still vastly outshines anything on the, on other currencies. All of the world's commodities are essentially denominated in dollars. Most of global trade happens in dollars. And particularly where areas where stablecoins are being adopted for normal everyday transactions, these are places where there is less faith in local institutions. There may be high inflation or high volatility of the local currency, and those people actually prefer to keep their tokens in something more stable like US dollars. And so, we're a very customer-focused organization. We go where our customers tell us to go. To the extent that folks want to be able to off-ramp that into local or regional currencies, and they want to use a source from PayPal to do that, we'll listen to that and respond accordingly. But at the moment, the demand seems to be on the dollar side.
That makes total sense. And maybe to end, even though you kind of did hint about this and kind of tease this a bit, but what actually is kind of the focus moving forward? Like, are you just going to continue growing what's working, or what else can we expect here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really two tracks to that. One is that from the use case perspective, if you're SAP, we just announced that SAP now has integrated PYUSD into their global currency hub for business-to-business invoices. If you are the average PayPal customer, you actually don't care what's underneath the hood. So we're focused for those people on the application layer, getting those experiences right, being able to bring that and weave that through the rest of the PayPal experience. For those of you in this room and me and my team, we're focused on continuing to track the trends at the protocol layer, things like the various EIPs that are coming out of Ethereum, the additional token extensions that are on Solana, and some of the innovations that are happening with the L2s to really continue to build out that foundation and that substrate so that we can bring more innovations into the space.
Amazing. Edwin, thank you so much for this amazing conversation, and looking forward to seeing more from PayPal.
Great to be here.